You're playing RTA, trying to grind some ranks. Your opponent pre-bans the Nahor, so you assume they're a nice, wholesome turn 2 player, and you go with your cleave setup. When out of nowhere, boom! Bulwark Freya. And they pick a fast bridge. Maybe they counterpick your fastest unit. And they were a turn 1 player in disguise, right? And so you've just lost the speed contest and probably also the game in the draft already. Or have you? So today I'll be going over Hoyen, how to build, how to draft, what are her counters, and most importantly, how you counter those counters. So, first of all, this effect right here is a passive. So anyone who ignores passives will ignore this, right? Messiah is her number 1 op, right? If they have a Messiah, he will one-shot. This passive will not go off. You'll lose the game. So if you're ever playing Hoyen, you need Messiah on your team. Secondly is Born. His S3 also ignores passives. However, I found that most Borns, unless they're P5, super well built, they're not going to one-shot. Unless they have Dark Moon, right? So if they have Dark Moon, your Hoyen needs to have lower attack than your Messiah, right? You need to, rather than speed tune them, you need to attack tune them, right? Your Hoyen needs to have less attack. Otherwise, this will happen. So as you can see here, that only did 9.5k, right? My Hoyen has 19,000, right? So she would not have died here. And this almost certainly would have been a win, right? Like, this team lineup versus this, like, that should just be my win. But in this, at this point, I hadn't done the attack tuning properly yet. Right, and so that's why it's very important that she has, at the very least, 1 attack less than your Messiah. Next up, Kokardi. He doesn't ignore the passive, but your revenge attack will not proc on him because of his passive. And so instead of trading 2 for 1, right, your Hoyen will only trade 1 for 1. And then Kokardi is still alive on the next turn, and his follow-up attack hits really hard, and he'll wipe your team again. So you really don't want to deal with him either. And then technically Ray Mary, but she has to use the S1 to ignore this effect, and like, her S1 isn't going to kill you from full health. So Ray Mary is sort of technically a counter, but not really. Next up, aside from the units that counter her, the effects, right? So this will prevent death and give her soul ward, but if she's CC'd, she won't get the revenge attack, and when it actually comes to her turn, she'll be CC'd and won't get her S3 either. So effectively, any CC at all hard counters. So you need to run Bulwark, right? Bulwark is very important, right? Now, Count and Tiger Yin both have Bulwark. However, the Count passive being unconditional and for 2 turns, whereas Tiger Yin is just against the enemy that the mark goes on. I feel like Count is definitely much better than Tiger Yin for this application, right? There's also a like a Hoyen cleave build that you can run and use her like a Lilium specifically as a single target DPS against bruisers, and for that build I'm pretty sure you do need the damage from Tiger Yin. Otherwise she's probably not going to consistently one-shot the bruisers. But for the counter cleave build, I think Count is a lot better, as well as this lifesteal. It will give her enough health after she takes her turn that their fast supports won't be able to kill her off on the next rotation, and so she's likely to get, at the very least, a 3rd turn as well. So I think Count is her best shell, at least for this build. And as for Swift Raid, Fury does more damage, but I think after the buffs, she really doesn't need more damage. So the speed is really nice, so that you don't actually get lapped, right? If they're able to like wipe your whole team and then lap you, like, it can get pretty scary, because you know, she'll revive one of your allies, but then they're taking turns and turns and turns, And so they'll be able to kill off whoever you revived, and then when her turn finally does come, she'll kill off one of their other teammates, and then she'll have, no health left. They'll be able to lap her again because she's so slow. They'll finish her off, and then if you didn't revive basically your Messiah, like, it's a lot of the time just a loss at that point. So I do like her fast, especially like after the buffs, right? Before the buffs, she really needed like every bit of damage she could get. But the first buff brought this from 450 to 520, which was already enough to get her one-shotting most stuff. But then this most recent one with the 8% defense ignore for every 10% health missing, like, she just one-shots like basically anything now, right? As long as it isn't red, right? If it's red, you get this nasty minus 30 crit rate and 15% damage dealt. So if you're trying to one-shot, Holdens or Veronicas, good luck. Right? Even at a 100 crit rate, it's pretty inconsistent. But as long as your element isn't disadvantaged, you should one-shot most things. And then Harvest, right? If you're on Count, right? Count doesn't have Harvest, so you just force Harvest. Because this 30% defense ignore is really good if she doesn't die on the first turn, right? Because you only consume half your HP. So if she didn't get wiped on that first turn, you'll have 36% defense ignore. On top of this 30%, you're at 66%. And so she should still one-shot stuff, even without this attack buff and being really low health with all this, as long as you're not, trying to hit into Bloodbath. So that's why I've got her set up the way she is, right? Bulwark is mandatory, otherwise she's just hard countered by any CC. I like Swift Raid because it's nice to have her fast. And then Harvest, so that even if they don't kill you on the first turn, right, she still puts out pretty good damage. As for the skills, I think the minimum level of investment, like bare minimum, is 115, or 114 really even. You just need this damage. This does help out in certain matches if you bring a healer. Having the shorter cooldown, like, she'll actually get to use her skill 3 a second time a lot of the time. And having a shorter cooldown is quite nice. If you don't have any dupes, you probably need 145 or 144. Because this crit damage is pretty important. And this bigger attack buff. And then the skill one is kind of just icing on the cake. This extra attack is really nice to have. The extra damage on her skill 1 is also really nice to have, because a lot of the time, she just kind of isn't a unit after the first turn, right? After she gets the revenge attack and then S3s, the skill 1 just doesn't do any damage. But at level 4, it hits pretty hard. Like, you're not going to be one-shotting anything, but it does do quite a bit. And with this lifesteal, it's really nice to actually have some damage on the second turn as well. So with that, let's get into the draft. So the way I draft Hoyen is, anytime I'm first pick, chances are I'm taking Plume, and Ray Mary is pre-banned. Anytime they pick either my fastest unit with a Bulwark Freya or my 2 fastest units on 1-2, if Freya is not in the game, it's just immediately a Hoyen draft, right? So you pick Messiah on 2 so that they can't have Messiah because he just counters her so easily. And then Hoyen on 3. And now the problem they have is they have to figure out a way to counter Hoyen with just 2 units and the rest of your team, right? Because you're not banning either of these. You are banning one of these 3. And so they're only going to have 2 characters left to counter a Bulwark Hoyen and then whatever you pick on 4-5. And so it's really difficult. I think probably the strongest counter is just Kokardi on 3. I have yet to figure out a way to really deal with that. But it's pretty uncommon that a turn 1 player has a well-built Kokardi, so usually you're not going to have to worry about that. But if someone slams their massive you-know-what on slot 3, like, it's going to be a pretty rough time. The other ways are with a buff strip and a CC unit, right? So a lot of times people will pick like Nahor on 3 and then Heinrich on 4 and then something else on 5. Or they just go like multiple DPSs or whatever. Sylph is going to be your best friend, right? You run her triple effect res, 555 with an alicorn at like 270, 280 speed, right? Sylph will win you a lot of games because, people will often just go CC to try and deal with your Hoyen. And alicorn will cleanse probably all the debuffs she has on her, right? Because you're running triple effect res. So it should only be like 3, maybe 4 debuffs. She'll get her turn, and then you can use the S2 to cleanse all of the buffs on, or all of the debuffs on whoever. Lilith, I've got my Lilith built on Bulwark as well, right? So she's also pretty good in these heavy CC matchups where they have no buff strip. Another really good option here, if they're just trying to go like the multiple DPS route, Red Shiaki is really good, right? You heal everybody up. Your Hoyen gets back to full health with all that damage reduction, and right, she'll do the follow-up attack on one of their damage dealers, or her turn comes up, she kills the other. And then she's got the damage reduction against like 2 turn meter pushers and a support. Right, so that's basically how I like to draft. It's just whatever your opener is. If your first pick, if your second pick, and you have like 2 openers, you would just put Messiah on 4 and then whoever on 5. If they're trying to go like the Heinrich route, right? So if instead of picking 2 CCs here, if they put 1 CC unit here and then Heinrich, or Heinrich here and 2 CCs, I would go Aya here, right? Because my Aya is 300 speed, Strive, Reaper steps, right? So ideally you would have 1 additional Bulwark on your team somewhere, so they would have to use an AoE buff strip, right? Because what they can do is bring Nahor to the front and use his skill 2 on Hoyen, and then if they have a second CC, they can get the rest of your team with that. But if you have multiple Bulwarks, they have to go with the Heinrich first, and that will push your Aya to the front, and she'll push your team to the front, and then you win. So that's basically how I draft the team. I'll go into some games, and you can see how it works out from there.
開始してやるわ。はあ。禁物ね。油断が禁物ね。乱暴だね。処刑を開始する。
次はドイツだ。
耳を澄まして。あなたたちへの贈り物だよ。
この程度か。
大丈夫です。ホタルビの火が。
つまる。
大したことない。大したことない。処刑を開始する。
So I found this game to be like kind of the funniest, but also most unfortunate, right? Like Rain was having some really bad luck that day, right? I saw him on a Bread stream, and his whole team got cooldown reset by Santic and stuff, and like it was just not his day, right? But like we still have weakness and 60% crit rate reduction here, and the Lowen still gets one shot through Bloodbath. Like that's just really unfortunate. So I mean, he got robbed. And I'm like, Rain, if you're out there, I'm sorry about this one. And the last like kind of niche use case I want to go over is using her as an anti-revive unit, right? So I saw this guy picked the Amber Beonten, which is typically pretty scary, right? But with Hoyen, you can just one-shot their DPS, right? And you know, Hoyen prevents people from reviving, so she just hard counters Amber Beonten, right? So you can use her for that as well. So in conclusion, I think this is a pretty valuable unit for any cleave player to have, right? Anytime that you're losing the first turn, right, against another cleave player, it's really, really nice to have Hoyen. So I'm probably going to upload this on the same day that the 7-day login finishes, and you can pick her up out of this box if you don't already have her. I do think there's better characters here, right? Like if you don't have Nahor, you definitely want him. Nymphoniel is really good if you're trying to play turn 2 Fushu, but if you have all of them and you don't have Hoyen, I would recommend picking her up and getting her built if you're a cleave player. So any questions, leave them in the comments, and see you next time.